話未發聲，都寫我企誰為我成？天上有權，還有心可作決，誰要認命噤聲？試問誰能未覺醒？聽真那自由在奏鳴，驚喜在難違背的那份良知和應。
I'd like to welcome everyone tuning into this episode. Many of you now listening likely have a measure of personal freedom and liberty in your own lives, freedoms that the speaker you're about to hear from no longer enjoys. I do not say this to make anyone feel guilty, but to offer a reminder that we are very fortunate to have a degree of agency and safety in our lives that the upcoming guests, and everyone else in Myanmar these days, can only dream of. So after you hear their story, please consider how you may use your freedom to support or advocate on behalf of the Burmese people. Any action, no matter how small, counts. Now, let's hear what they have to say. For this episode of Insight Myanmar podcast, I'm really thrilled that we're joined by Thinzar Shunlei Yi. This has been, you have been addressing you, an extremely active person in the movement. Really, we could say one of the leaders of many different facets of the democratic movement. And there's a lot to talk about with your journey, both as a person as well as the last 3 years of activism that you've been pursuing. So I'm really thrilled that we have a chance to check in with you and learn about your life and your activism and your perspective on the dramatic changes going on in Myanmar. So thank you for taking the time to join us.
Also, thank you, some of our friends, for nominating me to be in this podcast, and thank you for Inside Myanmar for inviting me.
Right. So let's get into your story. And I think one of the things we try to do on this platform, a lot of people might know you or know of your organizations from the multitude of work you've done over the last few years. But on this platform, we kind of like to go to the story behind the story and maybe learn a bit about your life and your background that people who know your current activism might not know about your biography and get a fuller picture. And it's quite an interesting biography because your personal story, it touches upon some of the most critical underlying themes that we're seeing playing out in Myanmar today. And perhaps the unexpected or unlikely journey you've taken to get where you are. So with that in mind, can you start us off and tell us about your early life, your family background, and growing up?
So I myself was raised in many different towns of the Myanmar, because my father was a captain in the military. So we had to move to different places after like 2 years and 2 years. So I live in many different places in the country with my mom and my 2 siblings. So we were basically like live in Rakhine State for like 7 years when I was young, and when I know that I'm alive, I'm already in Rakhine State. It's really harsh condition in Rakhine, in small town, and even like as a military, as some of you may know, that military is itself is a state within a state, right? So they have their own community. Even in the Rakhine State, in a small town, we live in an outskirt area, like really far from the town. So I don't really know how a town look like. I never been to a town. I never met or talk with the people and civilians. I always was raised inside around soldiers, by the soldiers, and also in our small communities, we have our own school, we have our own hospital, we have our own market. So I don't really have to go out, and then also in other different units, we also live in our own small society, and also we are trained to be superior. Like I'm always being told, we are different, we are not same like civilians, we are the soldiers family members. So civilians, we have to take care of them. So we have to take care of them, meaning giving us a superior role, that we are the protector. Like this mindset and this teaching also goes into the family members. So even a young kid myself start thinking like I'm superior than the normal civilians. And also there is a hierarchy inside the military as well. You see a daughter of a major, a daughter of a captain, we all have to listen to the daughter of the head of the unit, and also the daughters in the sense of the other rank, like lower rank, they have to listen to me. Like in a way, this is like a hierarchy of friendship, hierarchy of relationship even within. And I realized it is so awkward to be in the middle, because my father was not a high rank soldiers, and also like not very low. So I always caught up in the middle of it, and I don't want to treat other people, especially the lower ranks friends, as my like a junior, or like also I don't want to treat other who are in the higher rank to be my superior. So I'm always in the middle and always caught up alone, and I don't want to associate with their dramas and stuff. And also I study mostly in military high school. And I remember being in a nationalist high school in Myanmar. They have a nationalist school where they taught me a lot about religions, the importance of nationalism inside, and the importance of protecting race and religions, all these stuff. So I grew up with these military ideologies, I must say. And the thing that changed me, I would say, is not just one event, it's a gradual change. And also, of course, my willingness to ask questions, to learn about what's happening, not just in the country, but also in the world. I was a curious kid. I asked a lot of questions, and my father, to be honest, he's like he's quite a different man. Of course, we all were raised in the patriarchal society, especially in the military, is patriarchal. But my father himself is so, I would say, liberal in a way of raising me. I'm the eldest daughter, but he raised me to be independent. He raised me to be more reliant on myself, and he trusts me. He trusted me in me. Like when I was young, I remember he let me read a lot of books, and he applauded that, oh, my daughter is reading a lot of books, and that gave me confidence. Oh, and I felt like I should be reading more books. As well as he trusted me. We had a small business when my father was like assigned to a better ground in different places. We were left alone, and he set up a small grocery shop for our income. And then that's grocery shop, like when I was only 12 years old, I had to lead it, because my mom was always sick. My mom has an asthma. My mom was sick of malaria, because the situation in these outskirts areas so bad. Like, so I also got malaria too, but when I was 12 years old, I had to lead the family business, like small business. And I had to decide everything. I had to decide for the family income. I had to decide for my little brother and sister. I have to take them to school. So I become like really, I would say, independent, and I have a lot of confidence in me. And I went to school every day, or with my taking care of my sister and brother, and I have to take care of my mom as well. And I have to cook for the family, have to prepare everything. And that small business also gave me a sense of how to interact with people, like because I have to sell things. And I also have a bookstore where we rent the books. In Myanmar we had a small culture where where we buy a lot of when we buy a lot of books, and we trying to borrow the books to the people, and we charge on the borrow fees. So we had a small book, and I have to decide which book I am going to put in my store. So I have to read them first. I have to read all the magazine. I have to read all the books, types of books.
Hmm.
In a way, uh, yeah, gave me more understanding on what's happening around me, especially around the world, the news about different things. And when in a university after my high school, um, yeah, like as a daughter, in the sense of children of the soldiers, we always have to choose civilian staff jobs. So I decided to go to a university of education. And so university education, I would be a high school teacher, and that's a typical job. And and it's there is a guarantee that you will be paid well as a government staff, not like a paid well like in other corporate society. I never know how other people live in corporate life or in other different NGOs, civil society. I never know that. So I decided to attend the university. So in the university, the change, I would say, begins because in the university, I met with a lot of other different people. In the university, we have diverse group of people from different sides of stories, and they told me different stories about military. They told me military is raided in their school and raided in their family. The military killed their family members and everything. And I was so shocked because I never learned that. I know, I just think it is a total different story because my father was, and the whole background, the whole military is trying to combat the rebels, trying to combat the bad people and terrorists. And I never learned the other side of the story, how they are also targeting civilians, and people like my friends in the university also were a part of it, were victims of it. And that totally shocked, and I couldn't accept it, and I was defensive. And I have to learn through along the way, from debating, from having dialogues, from having conversations with them. Then I learned a lot from them. Also, along the in the university, that time we had the first ever election in 2010. So I was curious why we had an election, why the elections matter, and we were like kind of allowed to learn more about democracy. And so I started reading more about democracy for the first time, and it was only a few like little resources around me, so I have to look for it. There was an internet like booming. We had a small internet cafes, and I went there to look for more information, and that gave me more understanding. And oh yeah, we are going for democracy, let's prepare for it. And then also I prepare my mentally and physically how to become more democratic, in where I am. So I would say, having different friends and in the university just open up my world, and in a way I can build my tolerance, my understanding, and that's where the activism grew out of it. Yeah.
I'm curious in hearing you talk, just wondering about the experience of conditioning. And this is such an interesting word, of course, because there's military and national and propaganda kind of conditioning. Conditioning is also a word we hear a lot in the Buddhist sense, which we'll get into later, because I know that that's also a part of your life as Buddhist practice. But the conditioning that you're talking about as being a young child born into a military culture, you don't even go to a village, as you say. It's hard for us to imagine just this fully enclosed and insular life inside a military compound. And one can only imagine the kind of conditioning as a young person, even for anyone, but for a young person, the kind of conditioning that would shape that reality and the way that you would understand your world from that experience. And then as you move into university, which is outside the compound and with non-military people and people who become your friends who have been harmed by this military, this the way that they were challenging you, this goes beyond an intellectual or a factual challenge. This is like a psychological and an emotional challenge. I mean, this could be a breakdown in terms of trying to rationalize and comprehend uh, what the truth is and what and where you stand within that truth. And so I wonder if you can describe a little bit first just the nature of the conditioning that you had as that young person and how self-aware you are and you were at that time. And then when the cracks started to emerge out of that conditioning and you opened up to a more objective reality, what that journey was like and how you got there.
Um, that time I was only 16 or 15 years old, and I was ready to like expose myself to what's happening around me. And that's also one reason I have to like dare myself to get out of the compound. Because I remember I have so many friends like in my high school. My high school is also a military high school. So I grew up with, also I learned together with the other kids, right? Other children from other different ranks of soldiers and family members. And that high school is really popular. It was like number one in Yangon because so disciplined and had a really good result. Like everyone, 100% success rate in a high school. So in the high school, there are a lot of competition and really disciplined. I would say we have to go to the school in around like 7:30, and we have to pick up grasses. We have to pick up trash. So everybody have to be in the same uniform, and then maybe that's also one reason why everybody's like so in the same system and trying to become like to finish a high school with a high school and stuff. So in a way that also gave me a, later on that also gave me a like a reflection, like, oh, our society is so militarized, because even that high school is really popular, and other friends who are not a family member, they try so hard to be admitted to the school, to that high school. I remember some of the friends, of course, like for a family member, we got a free entry because we are from military, so the military high school have to accept us. But there are other civilians, really rich people, they try so hard to be in that high school because it's so disciplined and blah blah. Anyway, so in the military, I'm already like kind of learn more about the other world from my books. When I started opening that bookstore, I read a lot about, but definitely no politics. There were no politics. There were high censorship in the country that time. So I never learn anything about like democracy forces, how they are organizing on the ground, the 88 generations, 88 uprisings, all these like I learned only from military propagandists. So
Mm-hmm.
they are newspaper, and all these newspaper, they have that fabricated news, and I just read all the news, especially what's available to me is all the newspaper that are already censored. So we have no information about what's happening, but we had that slide of opening in the internet, right? Internet is there, but also we don't know how to use it. Like there were stay a censorship on YouTube, Twitter, and all these other important platforms. I remember we have only access to Facebook, and Facebook is only beginning, and there was nothing on it. And there are some Google, but you don't know how to Google, what to Google. That's not in your interest. So I don't know about politics, and nobody's telling me how to become more politics. And but in the university, definitely I think the only chance, the opening the window for us is that I remember I'm really interested in speaking and being a public speaker. And because I was training to become a teacher, so I need to be good at speaking and I need to be influential to the young kids. So that's how I was training. So in the university, there were some competitions like impromptu competition, or like essays competition, English speaking competition, because I major in English language teaching. So in that, I remember in the university, we have to pick up the topics of our discussions, and I picked something called voter education, because that time we had elections coming up in 2010. So we are told that it's important that you have to vote as a citizen. So that's in every way. Like the government was telling everybody to vote in 2010. So I felt like, oh, it's my responsibility to vote. But I was not even 18 years old yet that time, so I couldn't vote. But I feel like I need to learn more about it. And as a teacher, I'm responsible to tell my students what is it voting means and what is the 2008 constitution. So and then I try to study more about voter education, and I like choose that topic to give a presentation about voter education, and I submitted to my university that I will be speaking about it, and the professor approved it. So I was like, oh, the professor also want to know about voter education. So on the day the presentation stage arrived, and I was on the stage, and I started explaining the types of the parliament. And we don't even have a whiteboard, it's a blackboard, and I have to, the university itself is like a big high school,
Hmm.
our university. We have to wear green and white. It's one of the university that don't look like university in Myanmar, because we are all supposed
Hmm.
to be teacher. So teachers are regarded as like one of the benefactors of the society. So we are trained to become really modest, really
Hmm.
disciplined, and so on. So
Hmm.
on going back to the presentation, I was already on the stage, and I was started talking about parliaments. What does it mean, parliament, and why we have different voting system in the world. And then I started explaining by writing down on the whiteboard, on the blackboard, and then the professor was freaking out at the back of the class. I didn't know it. And then after some time, like 2 minutes, the professor just stopped me. She just came up to me saying, "Get out." And I was, why? This is the topic that I proposed, and she already approved it. And she said, "No, this is not what you're supposed to say. Just get out." So in front of like 100 plus students, I was like pushed out, and she's saying, "No, this is not what you are supposed to say." And that shocked me, and I felt really ashamed, and everybody was like wondering what's going on. And then she carried on to other presentation. I was left alone, and I was sad, and I don't know what's going on. And then I remember that day I decided to learn more about voter education, because I want to know why my teacher was freaking out. And I
Hmm.
thought it was, of course, it's a bit political, but it's in the time where we are supposed to vote. We should know that. Like in
Hmm.
a way, I tried to challenge it, but no, I didn't get a chance. So I decided to just become more political because of that. As just a young spirit, like we want to know
Hmm.
what we are, what we're not supposed to do. We want to know, we want to do more.
Hmm.
That leads up to more discussion in the university that I was leading, some political discussion. I didn't know more, like many things about politics, but I feel like I'm the one who is really courageous, and who dare to do things. So I was trying to like unlock many things. And there are some friends from different ethnic minorities. Of course, they are also really frightened because they felt like it's not, but they join me and in the discussion. And
Hmm.
we did this kind of discussion in the canteens. We talk about debates. We talk about different diverse opinion, how to facilitate diverse opinions. Yeah, I mean, just that, not even on the ethnic minorities issue, just on the general democratic values, and that's it. Not even human rights. At that time I remember I was thinking, oh, human rights is another issue that I'm not interested in. So it took me other years to learn more about human rights and how human rights are universal for everyone. So it's like a
Hmm.
slow process for me to learn it and learn. Yeah.
So do you consider that kind of like the start of your life as an activist, that kind of accidental explanation of politics, that the teacher stopped you, the professor stopped you, your explanation, and that led to you doing this more in kind of a rebellious youth sort of way? Do you chart that moment as kind of the beginning of your activism?
Including that, there are also other factors. It's not that easy to become activist in Myanmar, I would say, because like when you name yourself activist, you're not even sure like if you are an activist or not. And
Hmm.
there is a strong activist community, and you need to associate with them, and you need
Sure.
to get along with them. So this is how it was so difficult for me to be a part of the other groups that they don't know me, and I receive a lot of like doubts and cautious relationship. I don't know how to say it. Like they
Mm.
don't trust me at all. Like in a way, they say you are from volunteer society, you are from military society, you are from Burmese society, you are from um,
Mhm,
Buddhist
mhm,
society. So you're not with
mhm,
us. You are totally in a very privileged position. So
mm,
I received a lot of pushback and a
mhm,
lot of exclusion because of it. I mean, especially, of course, exclusion in a way because I want to be a part of the minorities, right?
uh-huh,
Activist minority. So I receive exclusion because I want to be a part of minority. Of course, I'm
mhm,
already a part of a big society, but
mm,
I don't want to be with them. Maybe that's also a reason because people push me back a lot, like saying you are a teacher. You are supposed to be a high school teacher. So in Myanmar, high school teachers are so dumb. Like in a way, they treat them like they don't know anything. And
mhm,
I feel like no, that's not right. I'm a teacher, but I know things. That's also kind of challenge. I'm trying to challenge myself as a teacher. I should be knowing um, politics, international affair too. Um, yeah, I don't want to be in that stereotypes types of teacher. So that's also
mhm,
another thing that I would say. Many people push me back, and I feel like no, don't push me back. I'm doing good. I will do
mhm.
good, and I will prove you I'm doing good. Maybe
So
that.
it sounds like from what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like as early as 2010 and probably that decade of the transition period, which is also quite interesting because during the transition period, when there are many opportunities for many people, and especially being part of the more privileged class, the Bamar Buddhist military background, there's even more opportunity. But during this time, during these years, it sounds like you were really striving to show your credentials, show your sensitivity, and gain access into some of these minority activist communities. Would that be correct to say?
Yeah, I would say now I'm a part of the yeah, it took a lot of time, right? So I feel like now I'm a part of the oppressed communities. Yeah, kind of.
Mhm. So this is also interesting because after February 1st, 2021, a whole generation became activists, whatever that word means and however it's defined, but a whole generation suddenly learned what it meant to resist oppression and tyranny. And that's what we've seen the last 3 years. But it was a very different kind of person and organization that was doing that before 2021, and especially the kind of people that were doing that during the transition period when I mean, just that name alone that it's been given is meaning a transition, and that's been argued that it's not really an accurate term, but it
Mm.
infers that it was transitioning to a liberal democracy kind of state. And so the kinds of people that were still pushing and interested in looking at further reforms and challenging what the either the regime or the NLD was doing at that time, there weren't so many. So what how would you characterize yourself and your activities during those 2010s?
It was a slow process for myself, a gradual changes. Like, and
Hmm.
I look back only 10 years in like last decade, right? I mean, but I became so many. Like, I became like from being knowing nothing from the different society, not being a part of politics or a part of the activist community, become an activist, become a human rights defender, and become a civil society actor, and become a like you activist, you advocate, and then I protested, I was charged, and now I became yeah, really revolutionary sort of. Yeah, it seems only 10 years, but for me it's like really really long for me to process this. And sometimes people just think me in a way, oh, she's from military. Like for example, just one example, right? When I criticize NLD, I criticize NLD because they were doing bad things for their minorities and ethnic groups, and I felt like, oh, they should be doing better. I voted for you and you should be doing better. That's why I criticize them. But in a way, people think, oh, you are from military family, that's why you are criticizing NLD. Like they
Hmm.
try to like justify what I'm saying based on my background, saying, oh, you are from minorities ethnicity, so you don't you are from the majority like Burmese and Buddhist society, but why you are criticizing NLD? Because she's a nationalist. She's from military sides, you know. So in a way, it's so confusing for some people. Like they don't understand how a person can change, how a person can like, especially young people can become really like progressive along the time. So. And I felt like it is possible. Like now I'm working with a lot of defectors, like soldiers, former soldiers, and they felt like they are excluded. They're not like when they change their side, when they change the sides, they are now like in the democratic side, and they want to become more democratic. They want to become a better person. So in a way they face a lot of pushback and trust issue, and of course, and I was telling them, trust me, if you are willing to become better, you will be like, because I chose that part too, and I
Mm,
walk through, you know, walk through this. I face a
mm,
lot of pushback, and I become a part of a society, and it's possible. Like, and you can gain trust, you know, if you are genuine, honest, and sincere, you know. So that's how I've been trying to mentor the other soldiers and family members that are from military sides, you know, to become better version of themselves. Um, so, like in the past transition, so-called transition, I always say it's a fake transition, because looking back
mhm,
myself, as like when I told you my story, right? The 2010 election gave me an opportunity to learn more about democracy, and
mhm,
in a way gave me access to different society, and I dare to like challenge, because the country is also moving in some way, so I need to move along, and then give me a lot of opportunities to engage with different people. But I would say and also that's the same thing, different countries and different the former, you know, translation people say, see, we did it. That's why you are one of the proven example of our success of the transition, you know.
mhm,
We train a lot of young people like yourself to become better version, and that's why the transition was important, that past transition was a success, and so on.
mhm,
But I argue that because what was it worth it, you know? That was the main question. Even though I was a part of it, I felt it was not worth it, because the past 10 years of course gave us a lot of other different opportunities, saying, oh, the Thinzar government was trying to open up the society to invite more investment, and the phone, you know, phone prices were cheaper, and the internet is coming, you know, everything was there. But I would say under 2008 constitution, was it worth it? Like looking back, um, I felt we didn't stop the civil war. The civil war keep happening, and the genocide even happened in the middle of it, and we lost our democratic forces to the 2008 constitution, especially the NLD itself is like trying to become a, you know, like adjustable, trying to be, they try so hard to fit in 2008 constitution, and that
mhm,
2008 constitution was not designed for Myanmar and the way we are. So that's why I felt it was not worth it. We had so many losses along the way. Of course, we had some gains, but comparing the gains and the losses are more. Like the country even becoming a genocidal country. So I feel like
mhm,
um yeah, I feel like there must have another way, you know, there must have another way. And the internet thing or the phone line thing, the people like appreciate things in government saying thank you for lowering the price for their phones and the internet. But basically these things is unstoppable. The digital, you know, revolutions there is like
mhm,
the internet is already going around. Like
mhm,
no dictator can stop it. It's not because they open it up. It's because it's unstoppable. It's already there.
mhm,
So there are many other things. I reflecting on the past 10 years, and I felt like no, it's not worth it. We should have done something better. And okay, now we already have it. So we already have that past transition, and we need to take lessons from it and go forward from it and be better, you know, better version of our own revolution. So this time, I think Spring Revolution gave me a lot of hopes, because
mm.
I feel like, oh, now we are on the right track in the end, you know? Yeah.
Wow. So, as you were in that transition period and you were getting more into being a human rights defender, in your words, and this also meant calling out not only the NLD, but also calling out the military for its many abuses. And you were going from being growing up and being conditioned by that military community to questioning it and now actively calling them out. So was that psychologically difficult for you to transition to not just kind of questioning or talking to close friends behind closed doors about some of your concerns, but actually in loud voices in public ways speaking about the military in these harsh terms? Did were you ever accused of people in the military, your friends or colleagues or family members, of betrayal, or what was that psychological experience like?
I remember the first protest that I was leading was in 2010, 2012. 2012, we organized the first public marching on peace, like we call for end of civil war, and it's on the International Day of Peace. I remember it was the first ever kind of commemoration of the International Day of Peace, September 21st, and I was become a part of it. And yeah, I remember we were protesting for civil war in Kachin State, and we were calling the military to start offensive. And in a way, before that, of course, even way before 2012 first public marching, in 2011, in 2010, I have a lot of debates and a lot of thinking is all like not kind of challenge. I challenge myself as well. Why am I being really sensitive when I heard they are accusing of military? Why I'm defending military? And also I felt like why I feel ashamed, why I feel guilt. So I try to analyze myself. And internet, it's like internet battle. Yes, that's true. I have to go through a lot of internet battle, and that was not new to me, because when I started reading books, in the books, like when you read, it's silence, right? But in your head, there's a lot going on, and you think through the books and the text. So I used to do that a lot. When I read books, I read for many hours, and I stay silent, and I was processing in my head what is going on, like, and what the story gave me lessons about, all this. So kind of it kind of it's that kind of training in my head gave me more rooms for me to have a better insight. So when people accuse of military, I remember I was defensive first, and then later on I feel I decided to look for information, right? I mean, especially from in-person account. So when a person tell me directly saying, my father was Jay. And I felt, oh, your father is already in jail. Is he a bad guy, like drag person or a trafficker? And he was like,
Mhm.
no, 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 not all the people in prison are bad people. And like, why?
Mhm.
And then they tell me, no, we are political prisoner. And I'm like, that there is a word called political prisoner. And
Mhm.
yeah, and that friends telling me how their family is living and how is, and it was so personal, so emotional, and I trust that person. I don't even
Mhm.
need to look for like more information, and I realized that is happening, and that even one event gave me more thinking, and I can imagine how it would be based on that little stories. The reason why they were persecuted, the reason why the families are living in fear, and the reason why civilians always submit to us. That all makes sense when I know that. Like when I went out in the public in the small town, civilians were just gave a immediate like priority to me, just because I'm a daughter of a soldiers. My father showed up with a military car, and then we went to a public clinic, and then everybody would just give way to us. Everybody. And I feel like this is I feel like, oh, this is because military is doing great thing. That's why they give respect. But it's also can be a fear. And
Mhm.
that gave me a reason. Oh, that makes sense that why people are reacting that way. They may not know why they are reacting that way. That could be fear. That could be respect. I don't know, but fear could be a big thing.
Mhm.
So in a way, that is also I process myself, and I try to make sense of what is happening, and I felt like, oh, I always consume the news from one side only.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to be fair. So I need to learn from other sides. In a way, I open up myself and I don't take it personal. Like, oh, they're not talking about me. They are talking about the whole institution. The whole institution
Mm-hmm.
is not me. So trying to divide into different pieces. And when I become a civil society activist, civil society role, like I really like the concept behind civil society is like they try to check and balance those in power. So check and balance those in power, regardless of who they are. Like they could be those in power, could be your father, those in power could be your mother, could be your
Mm-hmm.
relative. Doesn't matter. Whatever, whoever in power position should be held accountable. So that concept gave me a sense. Oh, if my father is doing bad thing, I need to hold him accountable.
Mm-hmm.
If people arrest him for what he did, I should be happy. Like, oh, the rule of law is working.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
this kind of mindset gave me freedom. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't have any attachment to anything. It should
Mm-hmm.
be more on principle, more not because not personal. Not it's not just about me too. It's about what I believe. So that kind of lead up to other things. So I feel like as someone who was raised inside military, as someone who know more about military, should be speaking out the military more. So that's my reason. And I feel like we should be doing more. And I felt that guilt that the military was doing so many bad things, and I felt really bad, and I felt I should be doing more. I should be taking more risks. And the same thing with the Burmese people, the Burmans,
Mm-hmm.
there is a Burmanization that different minorities have pointed out. There is a Burmanization system. And I feel like, yes, as a Burman myself, I should be speaking out more about it, against it.
Mm-hmm.
um and I also surprised why people don't do that, like especially from the majority ethnicity,
Mm-hmm.
why they don't stop what the majority is doing,
Mm-hmm.
that I can't understand it. And I even today I'm like I find really myself, even in the revolution, I was trying to mobilize other soldiers family, like soldiers daughter and son, to be more active, more like public figure in speaking out against the military, but I don't see many others. um yeah, I mean, there should be more of a people from the military side speaking out about military perpetrations. So only the
Mm-hmm.
soldiers are doing now, like like former soldiers, the defectors, and I support them to speak up more about
Mm-hmm.
military perpetrations. But what about family members? I want like the children. They have power over their parents. Actually,
Mm-hmm.
if they kind of yeah, tell their parents to stop doing things, I think that will work. And I was mobilizing for it, but I don't see a lot of other people doing that. Yeah.
That's really powerful. I mean, and it's really a powerful imagery you give of just the nature of privilege and how privilege exists in Myanmar, but then also just transcending even Myanmar and just thinking about what privilege is in the world and what it's like to hold and what it's like to be on either side of it. And your life in the 2010s are an example of your own confronting your own privilege and understanding and then confronting and trying to overcome your own privilege. And that was something that was really rare to do, I think, for a Bamar person before 2021, especially when in 2010s, when there were these opportunities that were taking place and people were taking advantage of them. After 2021, we did see, especially immediately in the weeks and months after, we did hear a lot of Gen Z Bamar really issuing these public apologies and taking stock of how they had been although they hadn't personally done it, they had been part of a majority that had perpetuated atrocities on people throughout the country. And it was this kind of coming to terms with that reality and trying to understand it. And, so much of what you're talking about in your own journey, which really predates what many other people would go through after the coup, and certainly what many people have gone through in the last few years, one can't help but be reminded of what happened in my country in the United States with the Black Lives Matter protest. And this several years ago, there was this kind of mass taking stock of white privilege and white fragility and systematic racism, and looking at what that meant on a societal level, and many privileged people in the white majority in America looking at privilege and their own privilege in a way that they'd never had before. And so I wonder if, to what degree you were following what, because you talk about how the degree to which you try to follow stories around the world and developments and such. And I wonder to what degree you were following and aware of what was going on in the wake of these BLM protests and the movement in America, with George Floyd and everything, uh,
Mm.
and the kind of introspection of privilege that was taking place here, and to what degree you see that similarities or differences or divergences with the Bamar majority in Myanmar, trying to take stock of their own Bamar privilege and try to understand that, because we do have to say, this is not an easy thing. This is something anyone who has any kind of privilege of any kind and is taking steps to confront it and understand it's very painful, it's very delicate, it's very vulnerable. So I think that really has to be said. It's not as easy as snapping your fingers. There's a reason why people don't want to do this. It's hard, and there's a lot of reason to want to avoid this. It's painful to have to do that.
I remember when the Black Lives Matters events and then protests, happened around the world and in the United States. We also, like, as a Burmese civil society, we also sent a letter to the U.S. government saying we don't agree and we don't, want. We felt like we knew too well about the oppressed, how the privilege play out and how the oppressed community suffer through all these systems, and we want you to do better. We trying to send the letter, and then
Mhm.
people were joking like, oh, who are you to send letter to the United States? We feel like, why not? We are all,
Yeah.
yeah, why not? Like, even we are a small country, always being supported by the United States government. We always think United States, US government is our benefactor, all the time,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So who are you to send letters to? So I remember that, and yeah, because I felt it's important to show solidarity with people, and because we believe in people power, where people stand together and we can change things, basically our own governments. So in a way, we also draw attention from this letter of what's happening in Myanmar. I mean, especially the majority and minority. And that time there was a Rohingya, crisis happening. So we're trying to raise awareness in the Bamar communities, and it was so hard. Like, I remember, um, we don't really say the word Rohingya when
Mhm.
in 2017 and way before that, and
Mhm.
um, and also myself, I was not an exception. I was raised inside military. I learned about Rohingya in military, and it was all bad things, saying, oh, the Muslim people invading the country and the other Muslim countries are supporting it because they want to invade, they want to spread the Islam,
Mhm.
in the country. We are Buddhist country, so we need to protect it. So very typical understanding that I had. And I never had a Muslim friend in my life, to be honest. Like,
Mhm.
in all my high school, there were only Burmese and Buddhist. They are all Burmese and Buddhist.
Mhm.
No one from ethnic minorities or from different um, religious minorities. So I don't know how Muslim live. I had no idea. I have no idea, and I don't know what, when people accuse them or something, there is nobody explaining aspect or like combat the narrative and such, etc. So and I always have that reservation, to be honest, because I'm a reflective person. I feel like, okay, I'm learning only from one side, but what about from themselves? What do they want to say? So I have that reservation all the time. I remember I have like 5%, I don't know, 5% reservation that I always keep it for their own, like the own people to explain me, you know. Um, so in a way, that is leading to when I met with Muslim people, I ask the questions and I become friends with them, and I also become friends with Rohingya women and Rohingya's brothers, and and try to ask all these questions that I always get and had in my mind. They explain me things, and that gave me more sense. Okay, things what's on the news or what's on the newspaper might not be always true, gave me more like more balanced thoughts around that. So in that Black Lives Matter times, the Rohingya crisis, we decided to organize a public forum, first ever public forum in September 16. I remember right a week after the August 25th in 2017, and I decided to organize it, and it was called Under 30 Dialogue. So I was only 27 that time, and I organized this only under 30 speakers. So we try to raise awareness about what's happening, not just in Myanmar, but also internationally. All these, and from that under 30 dialogue, it became I became more hopeful because I was so depressed when that happened. I don't know what to do, and I feel alone. And when I speak up, I will be excluded, and already excluded. So I organized like-minded people to speak in the same panel, and we live stream it. And there were kind of all young people from different sides from the Rakhine community came in, and they explained their side of stories, and that gave me hope that I can be hopeful with the young generation. The young generation have a lot of tolerance, a lot of understanding, and they're really suspicious with what's happening. They are critical. They are critical with the NLD. They are critical with military propagandas. They don't trust news. So they always trying to check with the ground, and they always trying to be, mindful of what's happening. So that gave me more power, and I feel like I'm not alone. I can speak up about it, because I have my community. Like they may not support me all the time, but they are the people that I can trust, that our generations already have a changing mindset. So I started speaking out because I feel like that's our generation. So but then of course the young people voices are always and hard, right? They're not prioritized, even though we had that kind of big webinar on Rohingya crisis. No media pick it up, right? No media pick it up. No news get out of the country saying young people have a different idea. So I decided to talk to a writers journalist, and then writers also features our voices. And because of that writers news, I got a lot of pushback inside the military, inside Myanmar, from military, from NLD, from all sort of communities, because I said I don't trust this leadership anymore, in a way. That is so um that's a hardship that young generation have to face, and many young people seeing me and other friends being pushed out and being like, how to say, political assassination, character assassination. There is that behavior in the Myanmar culture where when they don't like people, they just assassinate the character, and they will just spread that rumor saying, oh, Shunlei Sangka, for example, Mount Sangka is also a part of us, and then he was also very much like criticized by the Burmese people, saying for me, for my case, they say I'm from military background, so I'm criticizing NLD, and so we can trust her. She is supported by different Muslim country, and she has a Muslim boyfriend. That's why she's saying that. We try to make a fabricate stories, and these new come from NLD supporter, like really experienced supporter. So I was surprised, and that's the reality of the situation on the ground. So in a way, after that, I decided to start talking about privilege and power. So I still have that curriculum that I set up based on different curriculum that is already available, and I started speaking on that privilege and power. And I have trained like around 1,000 students and young people across the whole country, from the Kachin state to the Thinzar state to Rakhine state. I was speaking about it in different events I was invited to since 2019. So in the whole COVID period, that was my main topic. I was speaking about privilege and power, how we should be aware of our own privilege, not abuse it, not use it, not misuse it, against the other, but use it better in a way, effective way. And I stay speak about that issues in different trainings.
And so you were doing these kinds of trainings and bringing this kind of awareness, fostering this kind of thinking. long before the coup and then after the coup as well. And so this is a good time to talk about some of the changes that happened after 2021. But I'm wondering about the receptivity that you felt when you were giving these trainings and working with young people. Did you notice a difference in terms of how receptive or how open or how willing participants were to learn this before versus after the coup?
I would say, like just giving an example, I was working with a lot of grassroots communities since 2016 as well with my organization ACDD. So we have 14 different networks, so I have to travel to one after another, giving trainings and having assessments with them, and speaking to the villagers. And I work with village track leaders to for village for the administration reform in the past 5 years. So when I remember I was trying to make a test, right? I want to test the community. So what I was doing in the middle of the small town in Magui region. So Magui is so Bamar centrist area, right? So Burmese, so Bamar centrist. And I started talking about Rohingya in one of those villages. And I was explaining Rohingya in the middle of it, like out of my agenda. And they all were like looking at me and they say it's a complete new topic for them. So they
Mm,
heard that Rohingya is bad thing, bad, and they know that, but they listen to me because I'm not a Rohingya. I'm not a
mhm,
Muslim person. I'm a Burmese, just like them. I'm
mhm,
a young woman, and so they don't have any doubts. So I'm imagining if a person look like a Muslim person speaking about Rohingya, they will not believe in that. They will not like immediately react to me.
mhm,
But when a Burmese person speaking and explaining about Rohingya in other side of the country, they were like surprised. And they listened me whole time. That was, I remember it was in the middle of 2018 and stuff, it was so intense. But I decided to train and try to test test the limit on the ground. But then they were like listening to me, and they know that they respected me for my work that I've been doing with them in the past as well. So they were like, just listen to me. And they were like, oh, really? Oh, we never know that. In a way, they have a sense of Rohingya. They kind of familiar to the name, but from my way of telling the stories, they get a new like a concept.
mhm,
And nothing happened out of it. Nothing happened. They just listen me just like they listen to me other topics.
mhm.
So I feel like it is possible. It is possible to train on the ground. It's possible to speak about this issue. It's just that in our mind that we censor ourselves. We say it's
Uh-huh.
sensitive. Don't say it. Also,
Right.
I organized that webinar right after the Rohingya August 25th, right?
Mhm,
That webinar I broadcast that, but nothing happened out of it. Nobody sued me. Nobody, like, even the junta, I mean the previous government, right? They know that I was speaking about it, but no legal actions afterwards.
mhm,
No. Of course, I got a social exclusion based on this and that, but I also felt like there is a space for us to raise different opinions, especially when you are not minority. Like
Sure.
I'm not a
Yeah.
minority, so that gave me more confidence, and I start speaking up for other different minorities because I have more like I don't know. I have more like a protective mechanisms for people like me, people like ourselves as a Burmese and Buddhist. I would say compared to the other minorities. Um, so these are the things that lay out in these times. So I would say the young generation, when I speak about all these difficult topics, they have better tolerance and they are willing to learn. And just like when I was young, I have an open heart that I will
Mhm,
try to learn from both sides and I will decide myself. But the decisions on me. So the same thing with the young people, they will decide by them. They won't just follow me through whatever I'm saying. They don't blindly follow me. They just assess themselves and they will listen to me, but that does not mean that they would just blindly follow me. So the young generation is awakened, as you said. It's all like now becoming more activist, more cautious, especially with the politicians and old people. But
mhm.
of course, they have their own thinking pattern. They are more logics now. Like critical thinking is better, I think, in this generation. In a way, I think that narratives will change sooner or later. Yeah.
Mm. So, how have you seen Bamar ethnic relations change over these last 10 years, and especially the looking before and after the coup, because so much of your work was to try to build these bridges of understanding and dialogue, communication. And I really appreciate when you talked about this the challenges of this character assassination, political assassination. And I think that dialogue is so important. It's so important to be able to sit down at the table with people who we disagree with. And even in my country, America, this is a problem. This is a huge problem we're having right now, with people with different ideas just aren't talking to each other. They're talking to their bases. And I think that's really the central nature of what this whole platform, this podcast, is supposed to be, is having the power and the miracle and the beauty of communication, when it really happens, when you're really able to sit down and communicate. And so much of your work has been trying to build these bridges of not like superficial, sugar coated um uh, kind of um, uh, kind of dialogue or harmony, but really getting down to the basics of connecting and talking and learning about each other, sharing different opinions and perspectives that might not exactly match, that might be coming from very different quarters, and that's okay. It's okay to have those and sit down and to be able to learn. And so, over the course of these last 10 years, and especially before and after the coup, how would you describe what you've seen of the state of these Bamar ethnic relations that you've been such an activist in trying to improve and work towards?
Oh, obviously, that's one of the main profit, I would say profit, political profits that we get out of this whole thing, bad things, the
Mm,
bad news, like people say, what is our end result? Of course, it's important that we focus on the end result, but also it's important that we also recognized what we got along the way in the process. The
mhm,
process is also very important. So now we are staying in the process. The end result will be there soon, but along the process, I feel like we are on the right track, meaning that we have more chances to learn more about each other. So and also reflecting on myself. Oh, I never been to KNU control area in the past. I know KNU. I know Karen people, and I know like so many friends, etc. But I never been to any of the KNU control area or the ethnic regions. The very control like ethnic ends control areas. I've been to many different states and regions, but more in the Burma control, like the government control areas. So, but now we are all pushed to go. I would say we are forced to flee, right, to different jungles, to different places. Um, Even the NLD themselves, right? They were so, I would say, they were so proud of their own result of the 2020 elections, 2015 elections, but now they are forced to go into a, very deep layer of the ethnic struggle and the ethnic sacrifices, what they are going through, and we have to experience it, even if we like it or not. Now we are all equally refugees. We are all equally
mhm.
stateless in a way. Give us more chances to open up our heart and trying to
Mm,
adjust to that. I think it's a law of nature, because like, for example, I don't know, I felt like when the whole country, the whole war is so polluting, then the COVID happened, and where we are forced to stay home and not use the vehicle, the airplane. And so in a way that happened to us, where everyone, all the Burmese, are now go to learn more about the ethnic minority struggle. And even we now take support from the Rohingya community. Even the NUG itself has now the first ever Rohingya minister, and
mm,
because of the Rohingya issue, they get more leverage, they get more credibilities and reputations, and so it's so, yeah, it's so funny at the same time. It's so um within 3 years many things happened.
mm,
um
mm,
yeah, I mean, that could be quick, if we are willing to, it could be quick. that gave
mm.
that gave me that also made me sad, like in the past 10 years we have wasted our time. We
Uh-huh.
have a lot of time that we can become closer to the ethnic minority, we can become closest to the oppressed community, and we can be better, but we have wasted our time seeing you are in the power position, you are not in the power position.
Mhm.
In a way, we exclude each other, we don't talk to each other, And the political system also the bias. The political system designed to become just you and the military. So like the NLD or the military, the people were forced to vote only one out of it, and people voted only NLD, and that totally exclude and undermine the other different ethnic struggle in each different states and region, saying we need only one central body. No, we needed a federal democracy, like where we have our own division of resources and division of power. So now we are forced to be talking about federalism, because of the coup. The
Yeah.
coup happened. Myanmar like didn't want us to become more like united in a way,
Mm.
and a federal democracy. He did it. He said, "I will organize a election again. Don't worry, I will do it."
Mhm. Mhm.
He said, "I'm stay on the democratic part. I'm stay willing to become a federal democracy." But now it's too late. Like people already decided, okay, we abandon you, and we're gonna talk about our own struggle. And now we start talking about a new CC, right? Federal democracy charter. So definitely that kind of that block, right? That block, we tend the block into more our opportunity. So the
Mhm.
opportunity is the revolution. So in the revolutions, we are now more receptive to more different thoughts and idea. And Burmese, very Burmese, urban Burmese, they have to learn more about the ethnic struggle. They have to respect the different culture. They have to obey the orders from the ethnic leaders. In a way, now ethnic leader get more leadership positions. NUCC, NUG, you can see when the one KNU person speak, everybody's silent. Everybody silence. Everybody listen to them carefully because they respect them now. So I can feel and see that changes in a way. And I think, yeah, we have a lot to learn from each other. Like when we talk about federalism, we don't even need to look around the other country
Mm.
example. We already have it inside. um, when we talk about resilience, we already have it inside. We have
Yeah.
to just learn and adapt in a way. Yeah, so it's on the right track. That's how I feel. Better than the past 10 years. Yeah.
That's really interesting. And as you were talking, I was remembering this anecdote in this book I read years ago. I was trying to recall it, and then I remembered the book was actually it was about Burma. It's called The Road to Mandalay, and it was written by a British soldier that was in Burma during World War II, and he's just describing his experience. And there was one anecdote in that book I always remembered, I thought was curious, where he was talking about all the I don't remember what the activity was, but something that his division was having to do, and like the bridges they were having to build, or the supply trains they had to work out, some massive human operation that was just kind of insanely complicated and dangerous, but they pulled it off effectively. And he just had kind of a comment like, when you're, could you imagine if during peacetime and during like a calm and stable part of era of society, that you were able to harness the same kind of focus and attention as you can when there's conflict. And he was just kind of remarking, like, when there's this mobilization and this urgency that takes place when some kind of instability or conflict takes place, that sometimes during peacetime you don't really, or when things are just kind of calm, you sink into privilege and comfort and familiarity and cliques and everything else. And somehow when your backs are against the wall, and when there's something about the human spirit where when you're facing a much more dangerous situation than just your relaxed life, it brings something different out in you. And I was remembering that as you said that.
Yeah, it was actually it's hard to tell, but I'm just thinking now, uh can we do better when we are in a more stable situations, like
Right,
because
right.
I was doing the same thing basically in the past 10 years, right? I was
Yep,
doing
yep, you were.
I was protesting. I was speaking to different media, speaking at conferences. I was organizing TV channel, all these webinars. I even did a performance art. I've done so many activism,
Mhm,
trying to
mhm,
trying to like reach out to better like different communities. Of course, in a stable community, stable environment that give us more chances, more space. But the level of learning, the level of adaptation, the level of change might slow
mhm,
down. And
mhm,
what is the difference, right? I think it's not about in an unstable situation or stable situation. It's about political system. Which political system are you in?
mhm,
So if if your political system is in authoritarians or like under 2008 constitution, even though you have space, you feel like you can travel around, but you won't see much change because there is a political system already embedded, deeply normalized. You can change things. Even
Mm.
though you know you mobilize people to protest against it, in the end, you will be cracked down. You will be labeled as a bad people because you are protesting against the civilian government or Aung San Suu Kyi and etc. And then you will always push back, and it's like you are hitting against a very big wall. So that political system is like that. So if you are, even though you are in an unstable situation, you're always running, hiding, but when you have the liberty to speak your mind, when you have that I would say possibilities that how you can become, then you will try more to become better version, or you will try more to be,
Mm-hmm.
to be in where you are supposed to be. So I think it's a mix. I don't say which one is better, but I
Mm-hmm.
would say it's all about the political system you are in. So in the past 10 years, I try to do many things because I have more freedom to like go around. It's not like in 1988, right? I mean, I can go around, I
Mm.
can speak about human rights, democracy, but I also did a public hearing in parliament. I organized the first ever public hearing in the parliament in 2016 when the NLD government came in. I brought in like
Mm-hmm.
villagers to speak to the general sitting in the parliament, to speak to the parliament members and talk about village problems and
Wow.
administration reform, how to change the law. And I came up with a table of, law table to amend and etc. That was the biggest like advocacy that I did. But then I realized even though I advocate from different perspective, different ways to change the law, this law cannot be changed as we wanted because there is 2008 constitution already assigned which power should go where and which law should be how. Everything's already written. Everything's all like constructed there. So you can really change. You can change a bit, just one wording, two wording, that's it. So and I was so upset about it. Like, and I also did advocacy on youth policy development. I was a youth advocate and youth leader, and then in the past, and I was really heavy on the youth policy development. We organized the first ever national forum on youth policy. We had a Myanmar youth forums, and we invite like 700 young people from all around different states and regions to come together, gather and talk about youth policy. And we advocate directly to different ministry in the parliament, like in the cabinet in Naypyidaw. And we had a first ever youth policy in 2019. But then even way before we approved the youth policy, I realized, oh shit, like, I mean, this youth policy will be under the um against our own principle. Like this youth policy should be under young people leadership, but no, because of the 2008 constitution, this youth policy be under the ministry of social welfare. The social welfare minister will be chairing the youth committees. No, why? So because of the 2008 constitution, whatever you're trying to hit on, it's always fall back because it's like a glass ceiling, that you can never break. So I would say, and I decided, I was so depressed that time. I remember I even boycotted the 2020 election. I didn't go and vote.
Hmm.
And the polling station was just right in front of me,
Mm-hmm.
my house. And I don't go. And I was, the whole day, I
Wow.
was like banning myself. I was like really banning with frustration,
Mm.
confusion, depression. Because I felt like we are forced to choose only one party, and that party is NLD, and NLD was not
Mm.
doing good, and NLD will
Mm-hmm.
become bigger and bigger, will be more better. I mean, worse and worse. That I felt
Uh-huh.
not safe anymore, and I didn't vote. So I mean,
Wow.
leading up to it, so the coup was kind of setting up a new skill where we can change that,
Mm-hmm.
become a better one. So we use it as an opportunity to like, so we can never be the same again, in a way. At least
Yeah.
where we are heading towards, like, it's not just on me, right? It's everybody's responsibility to shape it, but we don't know where we will end it. But the one thing that we can say, we
Hmm.
will never be the same again. We'll never be the same like in 2021. So
Mm-hmm.
that's something we get out of this whole process. It's so painful, but at least we are going for a better political systems. And I also remember I was criticized a lot because I was talking about I want a social democratic political system. I said it in 2019,
Hmm.
and yeah, a lot of people were pushing back on that. But whatever, we are trying for a better change of a political system where there are more accountability, justice, and human rights and democratic values, prevail. So it's about political system. It's not about how safe you are. If the political system is bad, even though you are physically safe, you can never be free. So yeah.
That's remarkable to hear. And it's, so often the story that gets told is this Myanmar coming out of this darkness, uh, Obama himself talking about the clenched hand that is extended, that brings it into the light, and then hearing about the coup as this kind of destruction of the dreams of so many. And this is such a different version of this familiar story that you're telling that is actually exciting and motivating, where this terrible action that Min Online takes is actually, in your perspective and how you're seeing it, is actually providing this opportunity that would not have been there otherwise, of the NLD itself becoming this somewhat illiberal institution that is monopolizing in a different way than the regime, of course, but also not leaving a lot of open civic space. So that's really amazing to hear. And I want to fill in where we've come from and where we're going to, by bringing in another thread, that a completely different thread, that I think that once we start to examine, we'll start to see where this gets interwoven and linked with some of these other elements of Burmese society that we're discussing, and that's Buddhism and the Sangha. And first, before we get into looking at what is the state of Buddhism and the monk-lay relations today, how has the coup changed that, if we can get personal again. And I know that that your family was Buddhist, you grew up Buddhist, that the Buddhist teachings are still important to you, I understand. But can you start just personally speaking and describing the nature of how Buddhism was manifested in your home, and what type of Buddhism you grew up in your family home?
Um, I was born into a Buddhist family. So my mom, my dad, the whole family is all Buddhist, and so I became a Buddhist. And I remember from the books that I was reading, is kind of gave me a sense that I need to know what I'm doing. Like I need to really know what I'm doing. Not because you are you are born into that you become a Buddhist and then you just go along with this. That's really lazy kind of doing things. So I trying to learn more about Buddhism because I want to know what I'm doing, what I have to pray every day, and what is that. So when I was 16, I remember I went alone to the Abhidhamma course in the Sule Pagoda. So in
Hmm.
Sule Pagoda, they offer different free classes in
Mhm.
different school, different monastery. They offer that. So I was thinking of learning Abhidhamma first to learn more about Buddhism, the very basic stuff. And 16, nobody forced me, but I went myself, and I was alone, and I was the only youngest, student in the whole class.
Hmm.
I find it really interesting. That was so, I would say, eyes opening, and that got a lot of like make me it has a lot of logic and like rational, but still, of course, there are some things that I can think ahead, like so many higher thinking, that I have to digest on it. But I felt it more closer to the Buddhism. And yeah, since then I started reading a lot about from the Abhidhamma point of view, and gave me more opportunity to discuss this with the teacher. I asked a lot of questions, and then the teachers trying to answer me different things. And yeah, I try to look for some of the answer, like when I was young, like how life started. Wow, how
Mhm.
life started. So that's like very basic
Mm.
question of a
Mhm.
young kid.
Sure.
And I try to look for in different books and ask a lot of questions to different people, and I don't get the answer. But there was one book I found and explained me where about like how it's a waste of time, that you shouldn't think all this, that you have to focus in present. And so in a way, that also gave me a sense sometimes when you think very complicated things, and it takes your time, but you have to focus in the presence of in a way that you will understand in a way based on your practice. So they give us more sense of how to practice more. So I would say it's Theravada Buddhism, right? And still a learning process. Even in the
Mhm.
Theravada, there's a lot to learn. And so, but when I became an activist, I would say I learned about how to become more independent.
Mhm.
Because when you are an activist, you meet with a lot of different minorities and different ethnic groups and different religious groups. And then when you identify yourself, I'm a strong Buddhist or I'm a Buddhist, then it gives you more like I don't want to tie myself with just one religion. I like to know about other different things too. And I decided to open up myself to learn about other different religions. So I learned about like from my friends. So I don't become like extreme Buddhism, because in Myanmar
Mhm.
you see Buddhism is kind of labeled with the extreme nationalism, right?
Uh-huh.
So especially with the Mabada.
Sure.
So it kind of gave us the young generation feel like it's a kind of a shameful thing, yeah, even to say we are Buddhist, because the Buddhist
Mm.
in
Mm.
Myanmar like already portray like nationalism way of doing things. And whoever you talk to, especially older generation, they will say the same key like Mabata, right?
Mhm.
Even my
Mhm.
parents, my mom was really dedicated, devoted, Buddhism, a Buddhist person, and my dad as well. My dad's a bit liberal, but my mom is really like kind of really focused on Buddhism.
Mhm.
And when I became an activist, I can't even talk to parents like in a normal way anymore, because
Oh,
when I say
wow.
something, I remember I had a big argument with my mom about Rohingya. I was saying, wow, how we should be empathetic, sympathetic toward Rohingya and the Muslim minorities. And then she was saying things like, no, our teachers told us, no, these Rohingya and these Muslim, they are our enemy. In a way, I was combating with the big arguments. No, our Buddha told us to love everybody,
Mhm.
there
Mhm.
is no exception. Why
Mhm.
you're saying this? And then we had a big argument. I even cried with this, like I felt like why Rohingya people are so hated, even in the loving mother that I know.
Right.
It's like
Right. Right.
really loving mother
Mhm.
were brainwashed that way. And that made me sad. And I tried to explain her, and she felt like, oh, you are such a saint. Like she was in a sarcastic way. She was saying, you're such a saint.
Mm.
But I still like argue with a lot with my parents, my grandparents, I still have a lot of arguments, and I felt like, oh, it's a lot to work on, to change the mind. And I decided, okay, maybe not change the older people's mind, maybe younger people, we can stay be hopeful with that.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, with that, now I kind of still think the Buddhism philosophy in a way to rely on yourself, to be more like self awareness, that critical mindsets, all from the Buddhism teaching that I learned from. And I don't see Buddhism as a religion anymore. It's more like a way of living,
Mhm.
So, in a way, I try to adapt that Buddhism philosophy into my way of living, to be more compassionate, to think before I speak, and yeah, to be more fair and square in whatever I'm doing,
Mm. Mm.
and to be consistent with what I'm doing. Yeah, so it's an internal work every day. If even though there are a lot of criticism and hatred towards what I'm doing, I have to be conscious with what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. I'm the only person who know what I'm doing, good and bad. So
Mm.
I have to
Mhm.
hold myself accountable, and that's ideology based on Buddhism.
Right. Right.
I have to reflect on myself. I have to criticize myself first. I have to, yeah, train myself. Even the way of thinking, I have to train myself.
Mhm.
Um, so it's my work, and nobody else work. And even though people hate me, if I know what I'm doing, it's okay. Even though people laugh me, even though I'm doing bad thing myself, I know myself, and that's okay. So in a way, more like a focus on myself, my own consciousness, and that integrity that I'm building on myself, it's just on me. So it become really and tech, I mean, kind of how do you say, you stand strong on your own ground despite all the different logadan aids, like logadan shipa, there are bad things happening to you and good things happening to you. It's life. There are ups and downs, but you
Hmm.
stay strong and you stay intact. I mean, you stay on your own ground. So that's also related to my political principles. I stay the same. There are a lot of applause or claps or hate or criticism, but you stay on your own principle.
You say as you went to investigate what this Buddhism is, you want to learn it for yourself and not just be who you are because you grew up that way, and you just do it in questioning. And that seems to be a familiar thread throughout your story, is this streak of independence, critical thinking, wanting to digest and understand something yourself. And you do that with Buddhism. So you talked about how Abhidhamma was something that became very important to you, taking Abhidhamma classes, learning Abhidhamma. Of course, there are many Buddhist countries in the world, but in Myanmar, Abhidhamma is more important and is stressed with greater priority and importance than most other Buddhist countries. It's held in very high regard there, and has been so since at least Lady Sayadaw's time. And so I'm wondering, first of all, just as you explored and ventured into Abhidhamma study, and that became your vehicle for understanding the Buddhist teachings, first, just a curiosity about what was it about Abhidhamma that fascinated you? And actually, maybe you should explain for a non-Buddhist audience, what is Abhidhamma? What is it? And what about the Abhidhamma spoke to you and was meaningful and important to you in your life, your personhood, your activism? And then aside from Abhidhamma, were there other Buddhist practices that you took on? Did you go to meditation courses? Was there a monk you started to follow, or listening to, or a nun and started to listen to discourses? Or did you take up a Vipassana in a certain kind of tradition? So just learning a bit more about the type of Buddhist practice that you came to take on.
It's a I think it's a mix of learning from the books, learning from the teacher, and also your own practices as well. I think so. In Myanmar, we used to parallel learning. So in the schools, in different
Right.
curriculums, we are trained to just read and memorize it and use it. And in a way, I see a lot of other people in Abhidhamma courses, because it's good to attend these kind of courses, but they just memorize everything and
Right.
not internalize it, not reflecting on it, and then yeah, it's really hard to tell who really learn and who really don't. It does not depend on how many like marks you get in your exam and such. So for myself, I think it's a mix. It's a mix of both learning from books and learning from teacher and learning from my own practices. In a way, kind of when I was young, since I think 14 years old, my mom was always in a monastery. She took us to a monastery, so I've been learning from different aborts and Seattle, and they were teaching, but mostly it was one-sided, like just one-way teaching. So we have to
Uh-huh.
just listen to it. But I started questions, and I remember I was writing some of the questions, and I gave that letter to the Sayaro. So in the next round, he tried to explain my questions. Kind of
Hmm.
way I feel like there is a way to communicate directly to the Sayaro. Sayaro will explain my confusion in his teaching in a way.
Uh-huh.
So I think it's better to just attend the classes. So I went to the Abhidhamma classes, and I also went to a meditation center every Thinzar.
Hmm.
April, we got some holidays, five
Yeah.
day, 10 days, and I always went to the meditation centers, and I tried different meditation centers, because different meditation center have different way of practices,
Hmm.
different way of teaching you, and different
Yeah.
way of doing things. So I was learning from different meditation centers how they are doing things, and I realized they have, even in Buddhism and Abhidhamma, and even in Buddhism and Theravada, we have different way of doing things. And
Sure. Yeah.
that gave me a sense that it is okay to be different even in
Hmm.
Buddhism. You can practice
Hmm.
differently. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that gave me more freedom in a way. I can also do my own things, like but the most important thing is the teaching, the philosophy. So as long as
Mm.
you are not deviating from this philosophy and the principle, you can do your
Mhm.
thing. Like
Mhm.
I always felt like, oh, meditation is just you sit there silently for an hour. That's it.
Mhm.
But then different meditation center give me a sense. It's okay. You can walk. You can be walking
Right.
and you can still be conscious of what you're doing. You can still be meditating. And even
Mhm.
if you are sleeping, like on the bed, you just lay down and you can still be meditating. It's not just one posture. But
Mm.
in Myanmar, it's so common that meditation is just you sitting silently in one room. I think it's also important that you give yourself some time and space for yourself and sit still. And it's also a very important thing to focus. But I think there are also other way. And myself, I'm a very active person. I'm a hyperactive. So it's
Mhm.
hard to just keep myself
Mm.
and
Mm.
sit for an hour. It's like a torture. I think for many people like myself
Mm.
that
Yeah.
relate that. So but there are other way of doing things, and that
Mm.
unlocked my understanding of Buddhism. So I become more cautious in what I'm doing every day. So I train every day of my life. Before I do things, I try to be cautious. I try to be know of what I'm doing
Uh-huh.
every seconds. It's still very hard to sometimes we lost ourselves in our train of thoughts and with different events
Sure.
influence. But you have to know that, oh, that is influencing me. And when you are angry, you immediately know, oh, I'm angry.
Mhm.
And that awareness just stop you from being angry. And then when you just focus on being angry, that anger just
Mm.
disappear. So that's how I've been really trying to train my emotions to be more not overly influenced by my emotions. So I think we should be better than our emotions, right? We should be smarter,
Mm.
smarter than our emotions. So emotions can drive you crazy,
Yeah.
especially in times of crisis, in times of
Yeah.
happiness,
Yeah.
or all these feeling. We have to train ourselves with our how to train our emotions. And so I think that's what kind of abhidhamma has gave me more awareness. Especially we have different mind, right? Different mind. Even though um, there is also the spirits that you kind of portray. They are like stereotypes, the meaning to different wordings. And so one key element that I learned is when you say some words, these words give meaning. These words affect you because you know the meaning behind the words. So but when you divide the meaning and the words, it's it's another learning that you don't need to you don't need to take it personally anymore. Like when one person say car is like an English word, so you immediately picture car
Mhm.
because of your memory. So car has a meaning because of your picturing, because of your memories. The car itself has no other meaning, but just your memory behind it gave you that thinking. So this is a very basic thing, but I feel like that's really fascinating learning for me. So when I can divide a word and the meaning behind and how we put meaning behind. So when there's really offensive thing coming towards me, then I
Mm.
don't take it personally, because in a way I can understand these are the word that people use to reflect themselves, to project their
Mhm.
own emotion. And different you can think different things out of these basic teaching of the Abhidhamma. So I would say it's really eyes opening. Even
Mm.
3 months course or 1 month course will be really beneficial for our
Yeah.
living things, way of living in this life. So I really suggest we can learn. We all should learn Abhidhamma. Now, I was giving this suggestion to all the young activists, even though you're from different religion, doesn't matter. Just
Yeah. Yeah.
Abhidhamma and Abhidhamma, critical thinking.
Mhm.
These are the two main things to live a life. It could be a way of living, really beneficial for us. Yeah.
Sure, just know your mind. That's so much of the Buddhist teaching is just know your mind, know the mind-body relationship. And so beautiful what you shared. I'm thinking a couple things as I hear it. One is it's just reminding me again, it's underscoring just how important it is that those of us who are not Burmese, that are from outside the country, but care about what's happening there and want to be involved, that whatever angle we're coming in from, it's so important to understand how so many of the democracy actors, especially Bamar Buddhists or Buddhists from other ethnicities, how this the spiritual practice and the meditation and the mind science that the Buddha teaches, this is guiding so much of the activism, like yourself and like others. And I think that these, in English at least, in these conversations, these are not dialogues I really hear a lot. And I don't think that what you so beautifully shared, I don't know if we would have gotten that unless we had gotten you'd gotten the right prompt to be able to go in that direction. And so often we go in these directions and content that, as largely Westerners, we might be more comfortable in the political sphere of looking at, the federal charter or what's going on politically in the country. These are all important things. They're very important things to understand, but there's often a dialogue about them at the expense of understanding how Buddhist practice is animating so many of the actors and decisions and activities that are going on in really wholesome and helpful ways, in terms of being able to understand the mind and to be centered, to look at the role of ego, of bias, of blind spots, and just on and on, all these things. That's really great. And I also appreciate you describing how you're very self-aware, and you're just you know who you are, you know who you're not, you know what your tendencies are. And so with the understanding of yourself, you also understand that there is a type of Buddhist practice that is more conducive to who you are in terms of fitting into and sliding into that format, and perhaps a type of Buddhist practice like intensive formal sitting meditation and silence, which maybe is not so much for you, that that's not so much your style. And I think this is, from an outsider's point of view, this is really and coming into Myanmar from a Buddhist perspective or a meditative perspective, this is really one of the treasures of the country, because the way that Buddhism has been exported into other countries has largely been this intensive silent retreat model. And it's kind of a one size fits all model. It's kind of there could be a square peg trying to fit into a round hole, where you kind of have to contort yourself. And I really want to highlight, when this country becomes peaceful again, and it's such a generous country and sharing, in general, but especially sharing from the sense of these spiritual riches and spiritual teachings, that this is really one of the beauties for foreign practitioners like myself and so many others who come, is that they're able to have their eyes opened in terms of where and how they're able to practice. They don't just need to do one thing. When you're trying to do some Buddhist practice in a Western country, you don't have that many options or opportunities available to you. More and more are coming for sure, but there's a model of something that's been taken from a place of its origins and applied over here. And when you go to Myanmar, as you described, you have this really buffet table of where you're able to go, who you're able to study with, how you're able to practice, to what extent you want to be able to open yourself to these teachings. And as you so eloquently described, being able to know who you are and gravitate to this type of teacher, this type of center, this type of practice, and have those opportunities open to you in really wonderful ways. Of course, we're describing a pre-coup Myanmar, and right now things are very different, and that's where the next question leads, in terms of where we're at now and where we're going in what we're seeing of Buddhism in the country now. And to me, this seems like a particularly fraught moment, where Buddhism is kind of being reformulated right in front of us in real time. That's true of any religion, any spiritual teaching. It has to have the flexibility to be able to respond to the current climate, while also managing to hold on to core principles as faced with different kind of modern concepts. And so I think one extreme is to think that, like, the only way to maintain a religious teaching is to have a parallel societal structure where you have these entrenched hierarchical and patriarchal attitudes, and you have rote learning, you have a climate of fear of the outside world, you're holding on. You see that with some of the conservative and military aligned Sayadaws in Burma now, that it's this kind of fear and paranoia of the outside world and wanting to hold on to a traditional model. And another extreme would be to reject all of the associated like cultural, religious, spiritual, monastic forms of Buddhism as something archaic and obsolete, and to just reject it in mass and to move on to something else. But I would hope there would be some kind of middle ground, and indeed, this concept of middle ground, middle path, this is one of the great truths of Buddhism: is finding a way to continue to be relevant for a modern society, to take these ancient, traditional, beautiful spiritual teachings, and as Lady Sayadaw did during the colonial period, when the British were there, to be able to find a way to continue to have this philosophy and these teachings relevant, even as the times and the society is changing dramatically, with as you're having greater openness, diversity, plurality, access to technology, access to the outside world, educational, professional opportunities, travel, etc. And if we look at a post-military society, how do you see Burmese Buddhism starting to evolve, and how would you like to see Burmese Buddhism evolve in a freer democratic society?
So from the post-coup, like this time, right, the Spring Revolutions, we kind of reflected on, especially the revolutionaries, young people in different societies, especially ethnic and minorities. We've been reflecting on the past, and then we see Buddhism and nationalist, extreme nationalism. It's also a part of the problems, basically driven by the prominent Buddhist monks in Myanmar. They are supporting junta, and in a way that we felt like, no, this is not how Buddhism was, how Buddhism should be. And in a way, we're trying to combat these narratives that they are putting out, the hatred and discrimination against the other ethnic minorities and the religious minorities. So in a way, in this revolution, we are seeing more and more of other different Buddhist men rise up and stood up against all these narratives, and they are trying to portray a new forms of Buddhism. So you see there is network called multi-ethnic, multi-religious network, where these religious leaders work together for Spring Revolutions, and they broadcast every week, and they like kind of a preach over different platforms almost every day to explain what Buddhism is about, and how these Buddhist men, like in a higher position and different privileged position, are using it against its own principle, and how they are supporting and embodying the junta. They use the Buddhism as a card to exploit the people. They always say race religions is most important thing that they are protecting, and that was the main reason why they coup, and that's the main reason why they are doing what they're doing, all these perpetrations. And recently they used one of the videos from the social media where the MNDA, one of the ethnic armed group, was trying to destroy the Zaidi pagoda, and then right after that, that M group apologized, saying, "We are sorry for any inconveniences, any sadness that will cause, and that's not our order. That one person did it himself, and we are taking action on him, etc." But still, the military use it as a trigger point to to instill more fear and more, how to say, misunderstanding between different ethnic groups, and saying these rebels and these brotherhood alliance, for example, like, I mean, they are using this, they are the enemy of the Buddhism in the country. They are the enemy of the national security, national unity, and all these. They're instilling all these fear. So they've been using the Buddhism and the religions and the ethnicity as a way to instill fear. In a way, they felt they are the only body that could unite the whole country to be the same. So they've been doing this for the past 7 decades, and now I felt the young generation and all the revolutionaries are thinking, yes, we are Buddhist, we respect that, but that shouldn't be the one reason why we are condoning the other different, why we are condemning the other different ethnic minorities or religious minority. We have to live together in harmony, and we won't buy your selling anymore, all these religious selling over there. extreme nationalism is selling. So I feel that awareness is really big. Like for example, there is one group that I work with. They monitor hate speech and fake news and misinformation, and they also did a survey, public awareness on fake news, and they say compared to the last 5 years, there is a higher awareness about fake news. So people can spot what is fake news, people can spot what is propaganda better than the past. Because of that awareness, because of the alert that people have, like people are now awakened, like they have to be really careful what they consume, because these fake news and misinformation can slowly like get into them, right? And then the ground troops, especially the grassroots organizer, civil society, they are keep reminding the communities that, oh, the Buddhism will be misused, in a way by the military. So people hate military now, but they don't hate Buddhism. They don't hate nationalism. So that's also one thing that we have to make sure that people have better awareness what is the Buddhism and what is the propaganda by the military. So that network that I mentioned, the different revolutionary Buddhist monks, they were teaching, they were trying to combat these narratives, telling them how to be more compassionate, even to our enemies. So in this revolution, we are training our own compassion as well, because this is so brutal. Like the military is beheading people, military burning down houses, raping, killing in a most brutal way. All these things happening on the ground, but still today people are still welcoming the soldier, saying, please join us, please leave the military, we'll forgive you, like
mm,
we will give you a different life, come out, don't join them. In a way people are still welcoming them. Of course there are a lot of increased hatred toward the military and the whole institution, but at the same time, as I'm working on defection advocacy and defiance together with the former soldiers, and I've been doing this, and I know that people are still have that compassion. They felt like, oh, these soldiers, even though they are killing us, they are the victim of the system. So that's amazing that people still have that compassion, and they sympathize with the soldiers, saying soldiers have to
mhm,
do what they are told to do, because if they don't do, they will be killed. That's why they are doing these things. So, but they know that military is a bad, like it's the whole institution and the leaders are bad.
mhm,
So, but they're trying to help the ground troop soldiers. In a way, we are kind of being trying to be fair to these people, even though they are arrested, they are spared life. Even the Three Brother Alliance, when they announce a statement, they say, we will give you 5 things: that we will spare your life, we will treat the wounded soldiers, and we will give you the transportation, and you go home. So these kind of things. So also give us another setting. This revolution is not just about revenge killing. It's not about revenge.
mhm,
It's
mhm,
more than that. It's more than
mhm.
what we can become. And it's people like to explore that. People like to discover who we really are. And then in times of crisis, we show who we are. We can be really fearful.
Yes.
We can be really aggressive, but the leadership, the whole revolution setting based on that compassion. Even the ethnic leader, they are saying we need to persuade the soldier. We need to give them the opportunity. They are human. So that's what I interviewed to the ethnic leader in 2021, 2022. I interviewed them. I was saying, what do you think of the feathers? Will you stay accept them? Because it's too late. People say it's too late for them to
Mhm,
come out of the military. And these ethnic leaders say they are also human. They deserve a second chance. And
mm,
like that's what they say. And that's
yeah.
how people like us could keep up this advocacy on defection and
Mm,
defiance inside
mm,
the military. So these ethnic leaders, they were saying, even though they came as the infiltrators, as spies, they felt like we will stay accept that. And I was shocked. How? Like, because
mm,
that was one main reason people are rejecting all these defectors, because they felt like these people are not genuine. They could be infiltrator, and they could be, like exposing everything, and they will return to their base. And but these ethnic leaders say, no, we will stay accept them even if they come as an infiltrator. They say, But of course, all the defector, all the Burmese politician, whoever come in and taken shelter in our region, in our place, we will put them in different places. So they don't know each other, they don't know what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But we will still accept these soldiers as in fact, like whatever they are, whoever they come, whatever they come with. They say, but when they come with us, we will give them like opportunity to learn different things. So they say we would show them how soldiers should be treated humanly, because in the military they were not treated as human. They were treated as cows and like animals. That's how I
Yeah.
know. Like they beat each other so bad.
Yeah.
Like there's captain will be the lieutenant will be the soldiers. You know, these torture and these violence are all inside. It's in the institution. It's
Mm,
institutional attitude. The
mm,
torture and the violence. So
mm,
I'm not surprised when I see they were beating so bad to the civilians, because I have seen that inside military. I have seen they beating that way inside themselves. So they felt like they are supposed to be other people because they were beaten that way and they were trained that way. So they felt like they have to add on that,
right.
on the other other people um, without M, so they would do the same thing. So that's the mindset of it. It's become like a cycle of violence. So but these ethnic leaders, they say they show them how soldiers should be treating each other in a like comradeship, brotherhood, kind of. And I remember there are some soldiers who are really surprised how the ethnic leader are treating their own soldiers, because they never been treated that way in their
Hmm.
military. Like these ethnic leaders eating together with the soldiers, sitting on the
Hmm.
ground together with them, staying with them, they never been treated that way as human. So that treatment changed them. And that's how many soldiers still advocating as a public speaker, public, figure. They feel so ashamed of what they have done in the past, and they feel
Hmm.
guilt. And they are now really thankful and grateful that they can become a human themselves. And now they are advocating back, and they are telling to other comrades inside the military to come out, join them, or to do the right thing. So it's like a bridging, between the military and then the pro-democracy side. So these soldiers, these defector, we have like now 14,000 defector, including soldiers and police, registered with NUG, National Unity Government. And we think the actual number on the ground could be higher than this.
Hmm.
Uh, so many people are leaving already, but 14,000 registered to work with the revolution side. So these soldiers, yeah, they are really now advocating, and the soldier inside listen to the soldiers, because these are their former colleagues, right? So how they are living the life, how they are having a good life, they really envy on them, and they're like, we will join you soon. And then they join eventually, one after one come out and join them, and sort of, and so many other people want to join them too inside, but just because they are tied to the institution, their family are taken as hostages. As I said, it's a state within state, so you don't even need to get out. You have everything inside your compound, and that's why military leaders are not giving you leave to go back to your families, and to meet your parents. So they are all like locked up inside the compound and in the unit. And I think soldiers are really fearful. They are really fearful, and they are nothing without arms. So they are safe with their guns beside them. They don't have that security inside themselves. They are really insecure, and the whole institution itself is so insecure institution. So they're so defensive, and they felt the weapon is the only power they can have. So they only hold into that hard power, and they build power around these materials, these guns and weapons and fighter jets, and so. But without them, they are nothing. So now in this revolution, we are empowering these individual soldiers to realize their own power within, and to be themselves, to recognize them as a human. In a way, they can be empowered and they can stand up for their rights. Like there's so many human rights violations inside military as well.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we never know what's happening to the woman inside and stuff. So now we are saying,
Mm,
don't don't obey the orders all the time. Like, you can stand up for yourself, you can defend your own rights. So in a way, they can become a whole themselves, like a human, and they can walk through it, and they can fix their own institution in a way into a right direction. That's the revolution is, whatever we are trying to achieve, the society, the right-based democratic federal society is also maybe for them too, for their generations. um, so we are sending these messages. This society will be beneficial for your generation, so come and join us. And yeah, they are responsible for their own institution. So yeah, this
mm,
revolution, that's how I feel really hopeful that we have unprecedented, number of soldiers leaving the military every day. So many surrender these days. Like within 3 months, they were like 4,000 soldiers surrender.
mm.
Yeah, so if we keep up this advocacy, that will create more change. Mm.
Right. Yeah. And this gets into some of your activity after the coup. And it has to be said that you have been such a prolific activist, and your life has been so full up to this point that here, nearing the 2 hour mark, we've barely been able to crack the surface of just everything you've been doing after the coup. And there unfortunately won't be time to go into it all here because given where we are in the interview and how much there is to cover, hopefully we can convince you to come back to another session. But I do, before we leave off here, and time has just kind of flown, I do want to just highlight in general terms everything you've been doing and ask you one specific question about one of the more infamous pieces of advocacy that you did. But just to look at all of the different activities that you've been involved in, and not just involved in, really leading or founding from the ground up. You mentioned defection. That's a huge part of what you do. That coming from a military family yourself, you're definitely well positioned to be able to know how to talk to the military mind and the people's goals. You've been very active in terms of advocating for defection and support, and not just starting the process of encouraging you to defect, but then the holistic experience of being able to guide those soldiers and their families as they come out and integrate them into society. You've also been you lead an account India for Myanmar, where you're looking at Indo-Burmese relations. The General Strike Committee, you've been involved in that. Several other Twitter accounts with large followings you've also been a part of, in terms of some of the initiatives that you've been leading and supporting, leading dialogues with ethnic women and building solidarity with between Bamar women and different ethnic women, and fostering dialogue there, supporting all kinds of humanitarian efforts at IDP camps, and and some of the medicine and food you've been fundraising for and delivering there. We could go on and on with that. I should mention the Fight Like a Garment Worker cartoon that you sponsored, showing the plight of the largely female garment worker in Myanmar, putting that in comic form to be able to create more advocacy. But one of the really infamous things that you led with Sisters to Sisters in the early days of the coup was to take pictures of yourself and of other women that appeared to look as if you had been beaten.
Thank you for mentioning that. That was such a profound moment for me when I started that. And I would say it's not the first thing that I did. Like in the past, in 2015, I guess I dressed up as an IDP woman, internally displaced woman from Shan state, and I sat down on the ground in the middle of the Yangon, in front of the shopping mall. In front of the really traffic, junction, and I sat down there holding a baby, like fake baby, and I was writing something on the ground like, oh, there is another kid blown up in Shan state, nothing's going on, just keep up going, this kind of provocative messages was really successful that time. It went viral and people didn't know that was me, and they felt really touching. And it's also like brought attention to what's happening in Shan State and other different ethnic areas where kids are blown up, and people don't really care, and also people don't really know what's going on, and people live their life every day in urban areas, and then the urban city, the middle class, don't really take any action on these perpetrations happening. So I did it in essence sympathies and empathy towards different ethnic minorities, women and the babies and their daily struggle. Of course, it was I wouldn't know 100% of how they feel like being an IDP, but I can kind of picture, and I can kind of uh, portray their struggle in Yangon, in the middle of Yangon, as a Burmese. So that moment that I did in 2015 also humbled me a lot, because when I was on the ground, I wasn't looking at people. I was looking at people's shoes, because I was always like bend down my head, and I was looking at, and then in the message in front of me, I was saying, people just keep going, right? Keep going. And then, of course, as I said, so many people pass by, and so many people just stop and read the message, and they just went ahead. And most of the people who went ahead have a better shoes. They were very expensive shoes, and they just passed. But the ones who are wearing a very random shoes, really, poor shoes, they stop. They stop and just stand there, and they stood with me. So that kind of moment just gave me a sense of like how, yeah, grassroots people, they are always together. They will be standing for you when you are really in your low stage. So kind of gave me um connection to these grassroots people, and especially poor people. And it was just a performance. They didn't know it, and even though they knew that I was doing it as a performance, they just asked a lot of questions. They say, "What is going on? Tell me more." And I was fascinated by their interest, and I felt like, oh, this is how people power look like. People on the ground, they will be the first to oppose the different dictators, and they have to pay the price. Yeah, and that's also relate to what Spring Revolution is about. The middle class and the rich society, they won't take any responsibility and so on. But the farmers, worker, the government's worker, they were the first to oppose the dictators, because they knew too well how that would impact their life and their generations, and how the other people in other societies. Um, so when the women were beaten up in jail, and they intentionally put out these pictures of a woman beaten up, like, and they have a swollen face. And in Myanmar, in the society teaching, we are supposed to be pretty, and when they destroy our appearances, we are feel like, oh my god, I'm ugly now, and in a way you feel so bad. So I can feel that when pretty young women, pretty, like, young women were beaten up to that face, ugly face, they will feel so bad. Like, they will feel so bad. Also, their family will feel so bad. Their friends will feel so bad. So I was like, doesn't matter how you look like, you could be ugly, but it's your spirits that we are fighting with, and it's your spirit that we love. So I was wearing like a ugly, beaten up woman, injured woman, and I looked so bad in that picture that I was doing. And I don't care about my appearances. I would say I'm alive and I'm outside, I'm safe, but don't care my appearances. It's not about appearances. It's about the spirits. So I picture myself, and I raise three finger in a way that is a protest. I don't want to I don't want to give a wrong impression that I got beaten up that way. But I'm raising my three finger. It's a way to portray the situation. It's like a performance. And I also claim that in that Facebook post, saying many of the women are beaten up that way. But imagine your friend, me, is beaten this way. How would you
Yeah.
feel? And
Yeah.
so many international friends that I have, they were shocked to see me this way. And they always see me really shiny and like in
Yeah.
different events, but they see me that way and they felt so connected to our struggle in that way. So, and then I thought that sister is just me, and I was just one person. And then the other sister just also like copied this kind of activism, and they did it and it went viral.
Yeah.
And then I was just adding the hashtag sister, but then there are other sister who picked this up and they formed the organization. And I thought
Mm,
this campaign would just go away in a week
mm,
because there are
mhm,
so many campaigns are happening, but it didn't
mhm,
go away. And other
mhm,
sister picked this up as an organization, and they were like asking me to lead that organization. And I was like, oh, I didn't have any intention to organize another woman group because we
mm,
already have other women group already, and I want to just contribute to them. I don't want to form a parallel or like different groups again. But then I felt like in that time different women's group are in very difficult situation. They can't speak up, and they have to hide because they were so prominent in the past. So I feel like, oh, maybe we can use this platform as to fill the gap, to speak up, to raise the visibility for women. And we kept doing this, and we don't want to do overlapping, so we did campaigning, we did solidarity for women garment workers, for Rohingya women, and for women in IDP camps, women in prison. So different solidarity campaign. I think that's different from the other women's group, what they are already occupying with. So we are trying to fill the gap and trying to be the bridge between international women's group and the local women group in this revolution. Yeah.
So that was really powerful because you had the military doing this kind of scare tactic of putting out, of publicizing as a warning, a sick and grotesque warning of young Burmese women who had been battered and beaten in prison by the military, and was appeared out as kind of like a scare tactic of this is what will happen to you if, this was the early days of the coup. And you responded in something that you, as you tell it now, you didn't know it would go viral, but it didn't just go viral in Myanmar. It had an international trail of having women like yourself putting on the appearance of having been battered as a sign of solidarity and fearlessness, really an extraordinarily way of backfiring what the military was trying to do, because this sickening thing they were trying to do actually started a movement of fearlessness against them and using their inhumanity against them, so that it shone back at them. And this was really powerful. I know, I can only imagine what it's like to be holding as much as you are, and the stakes are so high and the stories are so horrific. And I know for myself that, and I'm and granted, I'm in a place of physical safety, and in the work that I'm doing, but just my own proximity to some of these stories and some of these events, I'll go through day after day after day of what our nonprofit can support in terms of the funding that we give to different IDPs or different vulnerable populations, the stories that we put on the podcasts. And for myself, I have to have something of to get through the process of the conversations and the work that's being done. There has to be a kind of separation between the emotion, the personal emotionality of it, and the actual work that is being done, in order to get through the day, in order to just process what has to happen. I think this is true for people in intense jobs and situations, people working in ER, police officers, firefighters, etc. You have to shut something off in order to get the job done. But then I know for myself that in some cases, this emotion will overtake me in ways that I don't expect. And at times, in certain conversations, in certain venues, this vulnerability and this emotion will suddenly come up. And it's not so much that I'm suppressing it other times, it's more that I'm managing it in order to get through some of these other tasks that have to be done. But then in surprising moments, there'll just be this emotion that's tapped into of how high the stakes are, of how much I care about the people that are at risk, and how severe and terrible the atrocities are, the anger of the international community turning away as they have, and then the emotion will just overtake me, and in those surprise encounters. And for me, it has happened in some surprise cases. There's been a trigger, and suddenly I find myself tapping into an emotionality that I didn't expect.
Um, Actually, it's such a emotional drive since a coup time. You see all your friends, close friends, being jailed, tortured, sometimes killed, and also different stories coming out from the ground. Every day we have to deal with these news, and as activists, and we're not even like a journalist or like a monitor group. So I don't really know the whole picture of what's happening, but I'm
Mhm.
like closer to the news and to the ground, so I know what's happening on the ground in a way.
Right.
So every day, it's been nearly three years now, and I would say every day people like us have to deal with these news. And so every day it's like it's a
Mhm.
battle that
Mhm.
in the morning you will be so emotional in a
Mhm.
way, because of, and it's rightful to be emotional because
Mhm.
it's really personal sometimes.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
your friend just got killed, or your friend go, like the someone
Yeah.
and someone you close with, someone you walk with. So even in my strike group, general strike committee, we have to close different Facebook account almost every day because
Mm.
strike
Mm.
groups, many young people stay striving in Myanmar, inside Myanmar, and
Mhm.
contacting, chasing them, and we have to like close down their internet account. We have to arrange for the safe house almost every day. So in the morning you will be really sad and really depressed. You don't know what to do. You're not in the position to control things. And
Mhm.
in the evening you will be motivated again because you see the whole picture of the whole revolution is about. And still people are still striving, and this is for the better good for the country. Like so in a way you are trying to navigate yourself, going in and out. But overall, I always say in different events, even now I won't change a thing, that I'm still very hopeful. I'm still very optimist. I'm still very much, encouraged to keep going things because we're already halfway through. I, the most depressing time for me as an activist was when the Rohingya case happened. That almost everyone I know is not speaking up. It's not like they were not standing up for and we had a lot of debates, and we had a lot of pushback, and attack each other. And we're not in the position to do something as well, and even our own government was defending the military that time. It's so depressing. And and past on that, I feel hopeful now because now everybody's aware. And now if I'm not speaking up on something like injustice, there will be someone else who will take over this, who will take over, and they will speak up for it. So now I can take some restful time, because so many activists are now coming up, and they are doing the same thing that I was doing like 5 years ago. So I can take some rest, some time off to be more strategic in a way. So that also motivate me, give me more space to be myself, to have my own things. And so every day is a mix of emotions and trying to control things. But overall, I try to remind myself that it's important that we live in present. We live in present, what you can do, what you can control, what is under your control. And then you keep up with us, and you keep doing things regardless whatever. If it may be a big thing, it may be a small thing, doesn't matter. You have to just keep up going things, and not derailing from your own road. So I have a very clear map of what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, and and also very strong reason of what I'm doing, how I'm doing. So I just keep up being on my own track, and keep things going one day at a time. And that will impact on in the long run, contributing to a bigger picture. So that's what I can control, and that I remind myself. But I was like emotional when I was explaining about my encounter with the grassroots people in 2015, but that was so overwhelmingly humbling for me.
Uh-huh.
That humbled me a lot. That humbled people like me, even though uh, I feel closer to the ground, closer to the grassroots community, and I have another stronger reason to work for the people, especially on the grassroots level, because these are the people that we can, they are already empowered now. Like they know what they have to do, and they keep doing things. So if they keep up doing what they're doing, even they have no support, even no resources, why not me? Why not me? I have different networks, I have different resources, I can keep on doing. So what drive me keep going is these people on the ground. They're not giving up. They're not giving up. They stay protest. They are
Mm.
now IDP. They are displacing. They face hardship, but they stay keep up the spirit, saying, if they burn down my house, I will build a bigger one. So this is a spirit that I heard from the old woman, like in
Mm.
70, and she said that. But she said
Mm.
that, oh, I'm sad. I'm sad that the military banned my trees. My trees is 50 years old. Sad, she's sad about the nature. She's sad about the trees. She's not sad about her own house or her own family. She said military is no longer in our soul, in our spirits. They don't recognize the military as military. So they felt, oh, the bad people will do the bad things. So that's no surprise in that. So they don't take military as military anymore. So that also
Mhm.
made me feel confident in my advocacy that we want a new change, new political change now. And so people on the ground, when the military raided in a banned house, then banned down the houses. After 3 months, they came back, and they will build new houses again. So and then military came in again, and they will flee somewhere, and after some time they will come back again. So and they say military is only 200,000 soldiers. We are millions. They can be everywhere, and
Mm. Mhm.
that gave me sense. Yes, that's true. They can be everywhere. We are everywhere. We are millions strong. We are like, even if they are military supporter, we are still like 30 million strong, or 40 million strong out of 50 millions. So that 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 gave me more like power over the military, and we keep up with what we're doing, and we will get there. We will get to a change. Yeah.
Well, I thank you so much for this. It's we're well over the 2-hour mark. I feel like we can still go 2 more hours and barely scratch the surface. It's such a delight to be able to talk to you, not just about your perspective, but your life journey and activism and just belief. Your confidence is infectious, and it's despite these difficult circumstances, it's just speaking for myself, it's really encouraging and motivating to hear your optimism and an optimism that's backed up by the actions that you've taken and continue to take. And
Thank you for inviting me and asking all these personal questions. I think it's sometimes good to recount on my journey, and that gave me a sense of who I am. And like kind of it's
yeah.
not every day that I think back, of my past life, of my childhood, and so
Mm,
it gave me an opportunity to also reflect on how like the journey that I travel so far, and
yeah.
no turning back. And I think even if I was given another choice, who you want to become, I would still be an activist. I think I have tried so many scenarios that I could become. I could become a teacher. I could become a someone else businesswoman, but I will
Mm,
always be an activist, and wherever I am in, doesn't matter the position, doesn't matter the community that I work with. I always keep at the spirits that um, for justice, justice and like equality. So I think it's important. Sometimes people might feel a bit reluctant to be named or labeled as activists, like
yeah.
they don't
Yeah.
want to be named or as an activist. That's okay, as long as you have that activism inside yourself, that you
Mm,
are ready to like speak up your mind, and when there is injustice, you will fight back. You will stand with the minority. You will stand with the oppressed community, regardless where you are. It could be in your classroom, it could be in your
yeah.
house, it could
Yeah.
be in your workplace. You are an activist. You are, as that activism should be in our heart, and should thrive in different places, not just in politics, but in different places. Then we all will equally change the society. And changing the society in the United States is changing society in Myanmar too. So wherever you are in, you do your thing, and that is also beneficial for other society around the world. So when we have a stronger democracy, we can help other democracy. That's it. Thank you.
I'll be honest, not only is asking for donations my least favorite thing in the world to do, I find it pretty uncomfortable as well. Yet, it is an unavoidable but necessary task in order to ensure that our platform can continue to bring you stories from post-coup Myanmar. And unfortunately, the truth of the matter is that there is a basic minimum cost to keep our engine humming. So please allow me to take a moment for that least favorite and uncomfortable thing to do, and ask sincerely for your generosity in supporting our mission. If you found value in today's show and think others might as well, we ask that you take a moment to consider supporting our work. Thank you for taking the time to hear our spiel. And with that, it's off to work on the next episode. If you would like to join in our mission to support those in Myanmar who are being impacted by the military coup, we welcome your contribution in any form, currency, or transfer method. Your donation will go on to support a wide range of humanitarian and media missions, aiding those local communities who need it most. Donations are directed to such causes as the Civil Disobedience Movement, CDM, families of deceased victims, internally displaced person IDP camps, food for impoverished communities, military defection campaigns, undercover journalists, refugee camps, monasteries and nunneries, education initiatives, the purchasing of protective equipment and medical supplies, COVID relief, and more. We also make sure that our donation fund supports a diverse range of religious and ethnic groups across the country. We invite you to visit our website to learn more about past projects, as well as upcoming needs. You can give a general donation or earmark your contribution to a specific activity or project you would like to support, perhaps even something you heard about in this very episode. All of this humanitarian work is carried out by our nonprofit mission, Better Burma. Any donation you give on our Insight Myanmar website is directed towards this fund. Alternatively, you can also visit the Better Burma website, betterburma.org, and donate directly there. In either case, your donation goes to the same cause, and both websites accept credit card. You can also give via PayPal by going to paypal.me/betterburma. Additionally, we can take donations through Patreon, Venmo, GoFundMe, and Cash App. Simply search Better Burma on each platform and you'll find our account. You can also visit either website for specific links to these respective accounts or email us at info@betterburma.org. That's Better Burma, one word, spelled BETTERBURMA.org. If you would like to give it another way, please contact us. We also invite you to check out our range of handicrafts that are sourced from vulnerable artisan communities across Myanmar, available at alokacrafts.com. Any purchase will not only support these artisan communities, but also our nonprofit's wider mission. That's Aloka Crafts, spelled ALOKACRAFTS, one word, alokacrafts.com. Thank you so much for your kind consideration and support.
Oba yarananda dayananga yaranaya dayanam boda yaranam